But how does this actually come back to UC? And this is, I think, what you guys are in the room for. So when you have if you were to walk into this room here, you walk in, you're like, this is quite cool. This is a seminar room. That's all that kind of, I come here for my talks. If all of a sudden in UC Careers was to invest a lot of money and just brand it UC Careers, there's like a massive ping pong table that you like come in here and play. You're like, man, like UC Careers is epic. Sorry, not saying UC Careers shouldn't do that or should do. They do have a ping pong table. So they've over-invested upstairs. And you come in and you're like, UC Careers is epic. Like I feel like I'm getting so much more value out of this. I'm going to come back here. I'm going to come and talk to Sarah and co for like more advice. That's what we mean by over-investing. So if we can over-invest with Heineken, we can get them to come back. And when they go into a supermarket, they'll be like, oh, yo, like, that's right. They were in that Vision nightclub in Shibuya. Like, I'll pick this up. Yeah. When I went over there and I was a little bit kind of like, am I over my head here? When I got there, I realized I wasn't. Just naturally, you guys being in the room here, you'll know more about craft beer than someone sitting in Laos or Thailand. So it's quite cool. But yeah, they're definitely a few more years, without getting too technical, a few more years behind us.
Did it help that you kind of like learn while you were there, while they were learning?
For sure, yeah, for sure. Yeah, but because I was further along that journey, it was kind of getting more specialised and more specialised. Yeah. So setting yourself apart at UC. These are three things that I boiled it down to, that when you're at uni for 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, postgrad, if you can nail these things, I've called it the simple UC equation to remember. If you can nail these things, I guarantee you'll crush everyone else when it comes to graduate jobs, when it comes to actually when you first start your jobs, beating everyone around you, or even just when you're at uni. If you actually want to get that scholarship or want to get recognised for that or whatever it may be. So the first one is the world-class education that I talked about. That's going to be given, You guys get that. You're already here. The second one is the clubs and societies. That'll become very apparent. I think you'll all know pretty well what UC offers here. And then the international opportunities. And some people do more of these than others. Some people focus more on their studies and they don't get involved in clubs, but they might go overseas. Some people just take advantage of all the international opportunities and go to all these cool programs, but they forget about their grades. Some people just spend 3 years going to parties on clubs, and then they actually don't get their degree, and then they leave and whatever. So these can be done in silos, but I think, this is my personal belief, I think if you can do all of these three balanced, then the world's your oyster. And I think, any job you apply for, you have a pretty good shot. So I'll go through and I'll tell you why. So UC's got a 5-star QS ranking. So that's basically a ranking worldwide that ranks every single university, every department, everything like that. So you're already in the top 1% in the world. That's mean. That's epic. Then you're also in that highly developed incubating nation that I talked about before. So these two are already given to you. You might not realize that now, you might not realize that in 5 years, but sooner or later, you'll actually be like, wow, I'm a Kiwi, like I'm quite entrepreneurial, like I've grown up in this awesome developed place, like I've got this real drive. I didn't even know I had that until, just hit me in the head and I have got it. And these three in particular, these two here are ones that aren't given to you. So at university, 3 things in particular stuck out when I was here. The first one being university talks. Tick, you guys are here. And I think something that's not students don't do enough of is go to these amazing events that the uni puts on. I guarantee if you go out into the UC Careers foyer, there'll be some epic events over the next 3-4 weeks. And when you start to go to these, you might find there's actually not that many people there, and you can actually start to get one-on-one time with the recruiter. Or you can actually talk to them about, hey, I'm studying computer science, but I'm thinking I want to go into economics. Like, is that viable? Can I do that with Fonterra or EY or Heineken or So go to these talks. They only take 30 minutes of your day. The second one is business case competitions. This one stuck out to me in my final year. So I actually only really clicked on this in my last 2 years. I started seeing these posters and I was like, man, there's so much stuff going on at UC. But I just never realized. I thought it was just, the Gentlemen's Club or NSOC or the Investment Society putting on talks. No, it's UC Careers. There's UC itself. There's faculties putting on stuff. So as soon as I found that out, this business case competition thing popped up. And this was done out of the Entrepreneurship Centre at the time. So what that did was gave me exposure to presenting. Would get flown to random cities to compete against other universities and, you know, have to prepare business cases and present. You started to think very business-like. And that wasn't something I got out of my lectures. I didn't get that from law, you know. I didn't get that from finance. I didn't even get that when I was doing the UCSA stuff. So this was actually very real. And these were opportunities that UC was throwing in front of you, but I just didn't even see them for 3 or 4 years. So if you can, you know, if you're first year, boom, get involved, you know. You'll skyrocket to the top quicker than you think in these programs that UC offers. And that entrepreneurship competition, that comes out the back end of them too. The thing I find is no one ever entered these competitions at UC, and there was always epic prizes. So you're only up against 4 or 5, maybe 10 people, but you're getting this exposure, you're winning these prizes, you're going to these cool cities because no one else has put their hand up and said, hey, look, I want to take this opportunity. So if you can do that now in your 3rd year, 2nd year, 1st year, final year even like I did, it's very, very helpful when it comes to actually going out into the world. And the last part I just want to touch on there is the balanced lifestyle. So at UC, we're very lucky, you know, you've got the beach, you've got the skiing, you can do that within 2 hours of each other. You've also got your music clubs. You know, you can join like a Sudoku club, I'm sure there's one there somewhere. But you know, there's all these things outside of your study. And because study there's a lot of pressure around exams, right? You know, you get to those last 3-4 weeks of university and you're just like, man, I just can't wait to go home. So if you can teach yourself outside of those times to have a hobby, you know, whether it's basketball, whether it's playing the saxophone, this actually allows you to have like an outlet, and you start to realize that study and work isn't actually your life. Sure, you spend, say, 60% of your life doing it, but there's the other 40%. What are you doing in that time? You know, go out and live your life. And people actually find you a lot more interesting. When I was over in Tokyo and after work I'd go hiking, or I'd go, you know, go explore like some temples, and they're all sitting there and they're like, oh, sugoi desu ne, like, oh, you're going out and doing all this cool stuff. I haven't even seen this. And I'm like, you've lived here for 30, 40 years, like how have you not done this? And so they find you way more interesting. And they actually start to respect you a lot more in the workplace because you've actually got a lot going on outside of your work and outside of your study. So here's an example. So at university, this was called the 21-day challenge. This was a random business competition I found in, I think, my 3rd year, where we had to build a business case for a Filipino village. And it was awesome. We got these cool mentors, we did this competition, it was fantastic. And I got exposed to these different cultures. And then when I was making this presentation, I saw that photo and I was like, holy shoot, like this was 3 months ago. I'm doing the exact same thing 3 years later in Taipei. So this is us working on a joint business plan. This is Xiang Yang, he's a colleague of mine from Singapore. This is Yu Hung. Unfortunately, I can't remember this man's name. He was very funny though. But this was our joint business plan. And how similar are these two photos? You know, things you guys are already doing now are no different to what you'll be doing in 5 years. So if you can go and do all these things that UC is offering and go and smash them now, in 5 years' time, you're going to be an expert. You know, you'll be leading this meeting and you'll be telling people what to do, all because you've gone and done it at UC. Like that's incredible. Like how sick is that? So the second one is the clubs and societies, and this one I think is something that UC does better than every other university in the country. If I was going on a limb and take out America, I'd say the world. And I genuinely am not kidding when I say that. So the reason I say this is because when you're in charge of a club, you're essentially running a small business. You're running a social enterprise. You're running some of the clubs probably do make a bit of a profit, but you're at the head of it. And there's so many skills that you don't actually realize that you're picking up from your time on these clubs, or even just from being involved with them. And all of the skills are transferable. You know, the project management. If the investment society, I was never part of the investment society. Sorry, is anyone from the investment society? Cool, I'm definitely going to pick on them. So the investment society runs a sausage sizzle. That sounds all good. You know, you rock up with a barbecue and you put some snags on it and you know, go along, put in the bread, bit of sauce, whatever you've done. That's cool, but what you don't actually realize on the back end of that, anyone that's ever organized a sausage sizzle, is you have to get consent from UC to like put the barbecue there. You have to organize the volunteers, you have to get the time of all the volunteers, you have to organize where's the sausages coming from. And it's a sausage sizzle. Like you just turn up and cook them and throw them in a bit of bread. But what does that teach you? You've managed the project. You've got your volunteers cooking the sausage sizzle. You've got to be creative because, if you just turn up with the barbecue, like, yeah, that's all good. Someone from the Free Food Society is probably going to post it and people will turn up. But if you want to make a cool sausage sizzle, maybe you have a hot air balloon flying over you. Maybe you have some party poppers, or maybe you'll have some like fizzy drinks. That's creative and that's innovative. And we don't realize that in New Zealand. We're doing all this cool stuff, but we don't even know it yet. And then your deadlines, your money, your execution of that actual sausage sizzle comes into play too. So if you can nail that while you're at university, then when it comes to real life, you're doing the same thing. So here it was uni, I think this was O week in about my 3rd or 4th year. I'm literally on a table with posters handing out Pepsi. Like that was half my day, like handing out cans of Pepsi and be like, hey, come to Mardi Gras, like, woo, And nothing's changed. Fast forward, again, this is like the last photo. This is working life. So this was New Zealand's biggest beer festival in Wellington. It's called Beer Varna. And nothing changed, Still got to manage a project. You've still got a budget. You've got a deadline. You've got to manage people. Nothing changed. Sure, like you're probably spending more money, but nothing has changed. I'm using the exact same skill sets I got at UC from being on the clubs and societies, and now I've literally just reapplied them to working in the company. This one is brilliant. Another hack we kind of found out in our 3rd and 4th year is UC is constantly sending people, actually New Zealand is constantly sending people overseas, and wanting to send people overseas. But there's almost more money to send people overseas than people actually applying for it, or more opportunities out there than people actually applying for it, which seems ridiculous, right? Like, do you want to go to like Italy? Cool. Yeah, it'd be cool. Do you want to go to like, I don't know, Taiwan? Yeah, who doesn't? Like, it's a no-brainer. So, and what I didn't realize until my last year is, again, all these niche things and these opportunities that UC is putting right in front of you, but we're not even looking at them, So start to dig around, because what you'll see is, one, the exchange programs. UC gives scholarships. There's also other scholarships outside of university that can almost pay for the whole trip. The next one is the study tours. So I was involved in 2. I went to one in Thailand, where I taught English and softball. Never played softball in my life. And the other one was to China. So that was a management 228 trip where you go to Hangzhou and you stay there for a week and then a month, and then you spend a week looking at New Zealand companies in Shanghai. And those were both paid for. So they both came out the back end of the Prime Minister's scholarships. And this is just a very specific example. There's one for Asia and there's one for Latin America. And something that students often think is you have to go through the university to get these. You don't. You can actually just apply for these yourself. If you go in and look for Prime Minister's scholarships, if you want to go and learn Spanish in Chile for 3 weeks, like my friend did, does he speak Spanish now? Poquito. You can go and do that. If you want to go and study in Singapore for a semester and you need, $5,000 to pay for your accommodation, apply for this. There's no reason why you can't. I think often we're too scared of failing that we don't actually realise, there's so many opportunities that, yeah, sure, we might fail twice, but the other 3 times, a few grand here to go to Singapore, a few more to pay for my living expenses. It's sitting there and it's incredible. And the last one is the international clubs. UC has a lot of international students. Island Apartments is absolutely just, full to the brim of opportunity for you guys to go and expose yourself to a new culture. When I went to Japan and Singapore, I found it quite cool that already just from being at UC and interacting with all these different cultures, I could actually level with these guys. But I saw other friends that when they came through Japan or whatever, they would talk to these guys and almost on like a moral hierarchy, or why don't you speak English? Or I thought everyone spoke English, but no, they don't. And you're from Timaru and they barely speak English there. So we're very lucky with the international clubs that we have here on campus. And a very specific example of this one is when I got to Japan. So when I started working for Japan, my first day, this girl sat beside me, and she's like, "Oh, you're from New Zealand?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'm a Kiwi." She said, "Oh," she's like, I went there once, And I was like, oh, true, like, where'd you go? She's like, oh, I studied at Rangiora High School. And I was like, I studied at Rangiora High School. And she's like, how old are you? I was like, at the time I was 24. And she's like, oh, I'm 24. And I was like, hang on. And she like pulls out her phone and she's got selfies with like all my mates. This girl, there's only 20 people in the company and in a city of 37 million people. And she has come to a place 35 k's north of here with sheep and pulled out selfies of my mates. And if that's not a small world by exposing yourself to international students, then, you know, I'd have no idea what is. And here's an example. So this is a study tour to China. You might recognize this man here, who's sitting in the front row here. But this is us. We joined a hip-hop dance crew in Hangzhou. I can't dance, still can't dance. But you can see, this was our last year at university, getting involved with students from China. This one was he was from Africa, a bunch of tall Kiwis. And then this was about 4 months ago. So you've got Indonesian, you've got Slovakia, Singaporean, Indonesian, Thai, Chinese. You've got all these different ethnicities. And look at the way, you know, look at these photos. This is what I can't get over. This was university, this was work. Exactly what you guys are doing now is going to be reapplied when you finish university. So you can have confidence knowing that everything you're doing within the 4 roads of the campus is actually just going to be rolled out. Whether you work in Auckland, whether you work in Greymouth, whether you work in, you know, Georgia, whether you work in the States. Everything you're going to learn at UC is going to be done and reapplied overseas or in New Zealand. That's quite cool, eh? You know, it's almost given to you, but we just don't even realise it yet.